Hi, my name's Scheffler. I'm with Mark II Ministries, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today at Inclusion Fusion. Glad you could take time out of your schedule to join us, and I pray that this conference is an opportunity for you to connect with people, to connect with God, and to connect with your congregations, and to help gain some tools to be able to include people with disabilities into your congregations. And at Mark II Ministries, that's what we really do. Is we, like Key Ministry, we strive to partner with churches to get people with disabilities into the congregation, into the life of the church, so that it's so ingrained in the DNA of what's happening at the church that it's like it always was. And like it says in biblical preaching, that people with disabilities are to be included in part of the congregation. And so what we're going to be talking about today is how to kind of take that to a different level, and we're going to look at networking. And networking, a lot of people think, is just for businesses, and it's really not. Networking is for everybody now, and it's really vital for people in the church community to network with one another so that you can avoid common pitfalls and you can learn from successes and challenges of what one church is doing, so you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel to do something similar in your own church. And it can really be an excellent environment to take networking into the church life and to really bless people with it. So the title of the talk today is Networking. It's not just for businesses anymore, because it's absolutely not. Now, some of you might even be saying, what is networking? Real simple definition of networking. There's two versions of it. There's noun and a verb form. The noun form is that networking is a supportive system for sharing information and services among individuals or groups that have a common interest. That's really all that it is. And then the verb form of that is to be able to cultivate people who can be helpful to one another professionally. So the noun form of it is the system, the verb form of it is the people. And thank you to people at dictionary.com for those definitions. If you're following along on the PowerPoint presentation that you got downloaded from the website also, we're on the page that has the circle graph in there, and it's basically just kind of a visualization of what the noun looks like. So Church A, Church B, all the way through to Church E are all connected together. They're talking to one another. And I know this graph doesn't necessarily show it, but Church E and Church B, they're allowed to talk. It's okay to cross over the circle like that. But it's basically just the network of churches, the system of churches that are together. And then the next page, the verb form, is the people at the churches. So that's where the real connection happen is. Jane at Church A talking to Bill at Church B, and really collaborating in that way to be able to make connections happen. And there are two ways really that networking can happen, and that's electronically and face-to-face. We're going to talk really briefly on some different ways to network electronically. The first one is Facebook. If you don't have a Facebook page, if your ministry doesn't have a Facebook page, you need to get one. The next page on the slide is an example of Mark II Ministries' Facebook page, and it just shows pictures, it shows events, it's interacting with people in an electronic format to kind of let them know what's going on, what you're doing, how you're doing it. It gives them an opportunity to post questions and to post pictures and to post feedback, to get the back and forth interaction so that you can have things like that going. One of the beautiful things on the next page in the slide is the Facebook event, which is a phenomenal way to let people know what you're doing and what you've got going on. We have a respite event that we're helping with at a church coming up here in the next couple weeks, and we've got a Facebook event for it. So we've got feedback from volunteers. We've got volunteers that are signing up for this based off of this Facebook event. So it's just a great way to interact and to have kind of the two-way communication there. So then the next slide is your ministry. You want to be on your church's website. If your ministry has a name, has this level of formality to it, you want to be on the church website so that people can find it. And then that ties in with the ministry Facebook page, and you get your volunteer engagement and your parent engagement through those different things. Now the next electronic piece that we want to look at really quickly is Twitter. And there are a lot of people that tie Twitter and Facebook together. So you post on one and it automatically feeds to the other. You can do it Facebook to Twitter or Twitter to Facebook, either way. But this is just a good way to get just a quick blast of information out. So if it's just hey, we're doing respite at 6 o'clock tomorrow night, just a real quick way to blast that out for it. One of the great things about Twitter is called hashtagging. And so if your ministry's name is Access Ministry, whenever you post something about something that's going on at Access Ministry, you put a little pound sign and then Access Ministry or Access or however it is that you want to create the hashtag. And then that gives people the ability to go to Twitter and research and find out what's going on at Access Ministry. So they can look, and based on that hashtag, everything that's been slotted into that little folder will pop up, and they'll be able to look and see the history of what's going on with hashtagging. So again, church website, tie in the Twitter page. Again, it's another avenue for volunteer engagement and for parent engagement. The last thing the next thing we want to talk about really quickly is blogging. The people at Key Ministry do a fantastic job of blogging. Steve and Harmony and Katie, they get out there and sometimes I feel like I'm not smart enough to read Steve's blogs because he's the doctor, so he's got the real in-depth knowledge, but I absolutely love reading his blogs. I learned so much from him. And Katie's as well, and Harmony's. These are just great ways to get information out and again to share what you're doing, and it gives opportunities for people to post comments, things like that. And the one piece of technology that kind of ties all these together is Hootsuite. Hootsuite is pretty fantastic because you can basically schedule Facebook posts, you can schedule Twitter tweets, you can schedule blog posts, all these kinds of things in, and then as time goes, whatever you schedule it for, Hootsuite will put it on the websites for you. So if you're looking at, let's just say you block out a half an hour on Monday morning to do all of your electronic communications, and you want a blog post to post on Wednesday afternoon, you can schedule all that through Hootsuite and it'll send it out for you. If you want a Twitter post or a Twitter tweet to come at Thursday morning at 3 o'clock in the morning for whatever reason, then you can schedule that through Hootsuite and it'll automatically send it out. So it's just a great way to save time, but to also schedule things in advance so that you get things out in the ways that most people are going to be able to see them the most, and it's going to be most interactive for your people that are going to be looking at it. So then the last slide with the electronic networking on it, you've got your church website, the Twitter, the Facebook, the blog, the Hootsuite, all of this stuff tying together the electronic networking to foster your volunteer engagement, your parent engagement, and really to get people to connect. Now the next part that we're going to look at is face-to-face networking. And this is really where my heart and passion is. Coming from the business world myself, networking is what it's all about. Businesses live and breathe and die by networking. And the basics of what it is, the Disability Ministry Connection, if you look at that sheet in the PowerPoint, that's what we've named our church networking organization, I guess, for lack of a better term. We call it the DMC for short. And that's basically just a group of churches that get together and meet face to face. We meet quarterly, one meeting per quarter in the year. I can see a case for meeting monthly, depending on how you want to work it out. You can do your own thing with your own networking organization. You can do 2 to 3 hours. What I'm planning on doing for fourth quarter of this year is having Inclusion Fusion be a part of our DMC, our Disability Ministry Connection. So what we're going to do is we're going to block out the entire day and then have people come at various times to look at various presentations through Inclusion Fusion, and it's going to be really great. And then the last thing that you need is someone to coordinate it. And that could be someone within a church or someone within an outside organization such as Mark II or Key Ministry or Johnny and Friends or whatever you may have in your area. Someone there to coordinate that. Now what I did, another sheet that I gave you is a piece of paper that is an example letter, and this is one that I actually sent out to churches in the Indianapolis area, and it basically outlines what the Disability Ministry Connection is, what it's all about, what we're hoping to accomplish, and just ask for feedback. If you're interested in showing up to an event like this, let me know, and then we'll make it happen. And I got a pretty good handful of responses back from that letter, and so we started it. Our first DMC had, I believe, 5 different congregations that were a part of it, and we've grown now. We're up to almost a dozen churches that are a part of our DMC meetings, and people invite people, and other organizations that they're a part of, people come and connect and things like this, so it just kind of grows organically through that. Now the responsibilities for a host church, I'm going to talk about those for a minute. And the host church changes every time we meet. So once a quarter, a new church is going to be hosting the DMC. And it's basically an opportunity for that host church to show off what they do, to talk about what we have. We have inclusion ministry, we have an adult ministry, we have all these different kinds of things, respites and whatever it may look like, to just talk about what we do, what that church does, and how they go about doing it. And a building tour is a great thing too, so that people can actually see the space where the church does it. They can see how they modify the environment to be either more stimulating or less stimulating, depending on the needs that they have for the people in their congregation. You can look and see, oh, they've got trampolines, they've got the fidget toys, the different things that are equipping the room, just to give people ideas for different ways to go about equipping a room. And another thing that host churches will do is to kind of outline their policies and procedures so that people understand what they do, why they do it, and how they go about it from an official standpoint. And they share those with the other churches, so that if, let's say, for example, a church is brand new and trying to figure out what disability ministry is all about, and they can read through the document of a church that's been doing it for 15 years or what have you, and they can take some of the highlights from what they're doing and incorporate that into their own, make it their own, and really be able to be blessed by that. The big thing is to share stories, share examples of what you're doing well, what you did that completely tanked. Again, we talked at the very beginning about not reinventing the wheel. This is a chance to share stories about how your wheel was made. And so that a church, like I say, that's doing it for the first time or just getting started can see how your wheel was made, and then take the bits and pieces that they like from that and then take it to make their own wheel. And it's just a sample agenda for a DMC is on the next page. For ours, we have a 2 hour time frame. We start at 10, we go till noon. Thinking about adjusting that a little bit, actually, and incorporating lunch into it, because everybody likes to eat. But currently the way that we've got is we show up at 10 o'clock in the morning, and we've got about a half an hour for fellowships and snacks. And the fellowship part is really neat, and sometimes I'll let it go a little bit longer than the half an hour, because I just love watching people talking to one another. And when new people show up, they kind of, the people that have been there for a while kind of fill them in on who everybody is and all this, and everybody's sharing stories and just connecting. And I absolutely love when I don't have to do anything during this part, because that's when the real magic happens. And there was a story, there was a very first DMC that we ever had. One of the ministries that was a part of it, they do through the week, Monday through Thursday, Bible studies for adults with disabilities. And one of their churches was closing down, and he was looking for a place on the northwest side of Indianapolis to be a host church for this type of ministry. And one of the pastors of a church on the northwest side of town raised his hand and said, "Hey, we'll do it." And so the very first meeting, within the first probably 10 to 15 minutes of the first DMC meeting, we had this kind of connection. And then this church got on board. Now they've got one of the largest evening Sunday schools on in the Indianapolis area. And then the next part goes from about 10:30 to 11:15 or so, and that's where the ministry will highlight what they do. And that's where we talked about previously, where they give the building tours, where they talk about policies, procedures, what they do. But then they also share stories about families impacted and types of ministry that they have, whether it be inclusion or respite or the through the week adult Bible studies, what have you. And then the end part of the piece is from about 11:15 to about noon. And that's where we have topic training. And that's where I'll get up and I'll do a training, and some examples of trainings that I've done in the past are inclusive environments, where we talked about before about making a room more stimulating or less stimulating depending on your needs, creating success in ways to equip a room so that you can have fidget toys, you can have the trampolines, have the things that you'll most likely need depending on the type of kids that you have in there. Another example is understanding friends with autism. With autism being so prevalent in the world today, it's good for anybody, whether you have someone in your church with autism or not. Chances are eventually you're going to. So it's good to have that under your belt so that when someone does show up with autism, you know how to best love them. And then loving through aggressive behaviors is another one that I do. And then design for the margins. That's a curriculum-based training to help people to modify curriculum so that it's inclusive for everybody. Those are kind of the top ones that I do. The next page is just some feedback that I've gotten from churches that are involved in the DMC. If you look at the top one, Danielle from Carmel, so she loves hearing about what everybody else is doing, and she loves to focus on a particular aspect of the ministry and to learn how other churches meet the needs of people that they have. And that's really a key aspect of networking for churches, is to get together and to share those stories and talk about the families and talk about what you're doing and how it's affecting things, and really to get people to buy into what you're doing so that they can in turn take it to their church and be able to bless people with it. Another one, Dee from Indianapolis, says the resources and the fellowship are fantastic. And I tell you, Dee definitely has the gift of hospitality. She's fantastic. I love it when she's at the host church. But then she also says that this time is such a blessing, I wish we could meet more often. And I agree, Dee, I wish we could meet more often too, but logistically sometimes it's tough to get that kind of thing scheduled. But again, you can see the hunger that's out there for fellowship, for networking, for getting together and sharing stories. Molly in Noblesville wrote one time that she got some great ideas from this quarter's DMC, and that she actually went back to incorporate them into her church, and I know that she did, and they were great. Molly's actually another success story from the networking piece of it. Is she had a teenager who uses an electric wheelchair that wanted to get baptized, and electricity and water typically don't mesh very well, so she was wanting to know how to best go about it. Well, the friend that I was telling you about earlier that runs the ministry for adults with disabilities, they have camps and retreats that they run too. So part of his ministry is they have shower wheelchairs. So what Molly did is she borrowed a shower wheelchair so that her friend that used the electric wheelchair could get baptized in the shower wheelchair and not have to worry about harming the electric wheelchair. So it was, again, just a connection that was made. She had the need, and then rather than going out and buying or renting a shower wheelchair, or running the risk of carrying someone down into a baptismal, they were able to use the shower wheelchair and have the success that way. It was really great. And then so the overall networking plan, the page with the big circle on it, you've got your ministry page on the church's website, the Twitter page, the Facebook page, the ministry blog, all of that operated through Hootsuite. And then you've got the DMC on the face-to-face part of it, and all of that to engage people, to engage the churches, to engage the volunteers, to engage the parents, so that everybody's learning and everybody's talking and everybody's sharing, and we're able to find out the best way to bless people with disabilities in your congregation. Now, I hope that you found this session informative, and I am always around and available for questions. And it's just been an honor to be a part of Inclusion Fusion 2012, and I thank you, and God bless you.